Hello and welcome to week 8 here in developmental psych, and we are well into talking about adulthood. Here we're talking about middle adulthood, midlife, and all the things that go along with that. So chapter 8, actually not really getting into so much about the issue of midlife crisis per se, but I'll mention a little bit about that in terms of what I'm expecting from you. The discussion is actually having you look at the concept of expertise. And usually right around midlife is when, in the traditional pathway of career development and self-development, identity and whatnot, kind of meet our stride in, shaping who we are, what we are good at, what we're not so good at. We might be moving up in the company or we're stabilizing with our friends and our hobbies and whatnot. In Erickson's view, it's the largest of all of the different stages. This is the generativity stage. So this is kind of where we're making our mark on the world. And one of the areas that we get is this concept of expertise intertwined with the concept of flow. And what this really means, and it might be something that each one of you are familiar with, is the notion that the things that you have learned up until midlife that you're really good at, even if you're not at midlife, stuff that you're really good at and you get engrossed in, and when you're doing those things, you really like doing them, it really takes all of your attention and you can lose track of time. Any sort of thing like that in your life is this kind of thing I'm talking about now. It may be school, it may be work, it may happen at different instances. There might be some aspects of your work that you really get engrossed at. There might be other aspects that you kind of have to force yourself to get them done. For example, when I'm writing the course books in my classes, I could lose a whole day. When I'm grading, I set a timer and I'm constantly looking at the timer. Not that I don't like reading material or grading, it's that it's burdensome for me. It's not as creative, it's not as fun for me, even though I assure you I do enjoy reading and commenting on people's work. It's sort of like the feedback I'm getting on at least partially why I'm doing okay. But the notion of this flow and expertise, and the notion of expertise showing up right around midlife. A certain number of years doing something, giving you that extra ability to be an expert at something. Now, the quiz actually has you go to your interview subject and talk to them about what I call the midlife event, which is at some point realizing that you look back, there's a lot of life, and you get this sort of sense that this really deep understanding that you only have so much time left. Still plenty of time, but only so much time left. This can be triggered by a near-death experience, the death of somebody else, the first gray hairs, when your kids leave the house, and there's sort of this time of reflection where a person looks at their life and says, if I'm going to do something different, if I'm not satisfied with where I am right now, now's the time to do it. I'm feeling that extra pressure because I'm going to run out of time if I wait. Interviewing your subjects as to whether or not they had an experience like that somewhere in their life. Might have been a near-death experience, the death of their spouse, or the children move out, or something happens to the children, or they get kicked out of a job that they were expecting to have for a really long time, and they had to pull things together, and kind of reflecting on that experience that they had in terms of identity formation as a result of that push into that. This is actually, when we talk about midlife crisis per se, the crisis word really is points to Marcia's theory of crisis. Means you're looking at the options. It's not necessarily a negative emotional time. It could be a challenging time, but it's a time in life that crisis can indicate I'm looking at the options now that things have changed, recognizing that I'm getting older, recognizing that my kids are now gone and that's no longer my full-time occupation, hopefully. They do move back sometimes, but But that whole idea is definitively a looking at the options. Maybe you've had something on the back burner in diffusion, and now is the time to do that. Like I've been, working my job, supporting my family, got the kids through school, and I've always wanted to go back to school to become a lawyer or something like that. Now's the time. That would be a good example of a crisis, a midlife crisis. Sometimes it's such an emotional upheaval, a person who becomes scared and dysfunctional in their realization of having only so much time can revert to a more adolescent type thinking, trying to reinstate that youth. And that might be the individual that goes out, gets the sports car, and dates a younger person or whatever. Those kinds of, or actually this kind of struck me because an example I used in class oftentimes, gender identity. If a person's been gay and closeted up until this time, this might be the time they come out and say, no more. There's also sort of a quarter life crisis that is part of the coming out process in the LGBTQ plus world, that when people move on their own and become separate from their, somewhat separated from their family of origin and have the opportunity to be themselves, and it can come out then. Of course, the world's getting a little bit more supportive, not enough, but the idea that people could have that going on at 25, but then at midlife, it's like now or never, bud. Either you're going to do it or you're not. And there's that sense of pressure because of the person's awareness that they're halfway, and they're approaching that time when there's going to be more behind them than what's in front of them. So I'm asking you to look at your subject, interview them about that particular question. Now, there is a special assignment, and I referred to it in last week's video. There's a special assignment that is due this week, and that is the identity status assignment. I want you to read the instructions in there very carefully. I also, quite a long time ago, did a video on it. So I'm going to post that video. It's part of the Psychobabble series, and it's an actual instructional video on that assignment and goes through, kind of the details that I'm looking for in that. Now, if there's any discrepancy between the video and what I have in the course book as instructions, the course book rules. The course book's up to date. The video was done a couple of years ago. So I'm going to include the video. You can tell me if it's wrong. I think I just went through it and it seemed okay. And so I'll post that video right after, at the same time that I post this video. And you'll have a chance to look at that. But go to the course book and read up on that assignment. It's self-reflection, but it is an application of all kinds of different theories that we have talked about up until now regarding identity. So get started on that early in the week. Have a great week, and I will see you in the discussions.